can actually go double flame tongue. Hey everyone, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going to go over the latest build of the Shadowlands beta for Shaman specifically. We're going to go over Elemental Shaman, we're going to go over Enhanced Shaman, we're going to go over the Resto Shaman changes and what they mean. There are also, once again, some bug fixes, and I'm going to start off with the bug fixes. Number one, I think that you guys might have seen it, maybe you haven't, but I had a video talking about how Enhanced Shaman was doing in the Mythic raid testing and about a specific build putting on double Windfury. Now, I know many of you were not very happy with the fact that I did that, and I just want to say sorry. I didn't kind of think I was exploiting, but either way, it's out of the game now. What happens if you try to double Windfury? This happens. You put on one. Sorry. What happens now is you put on one, it goes on the here. If you try to switch your weapons, which of course is a funky thing to do, right? And that's why people are saying, duh, you should have known it's exploiting. And you're not wrong. And I even said it in earlier videos in June about it. So I get it. So if you switch the weapons, the buff drops off. Now, one interesting thing to note is if I use Flame Tongue, which buffs the offhand, if I switch it, you can actually go double flame tongue. I'm not going to be using that. And I don't think it actually gives you anything advantageous, but it is also, it's just kind of funny that they allow you to do that, but not double Windfury. So again, Windfury is going to be on the main hand, flame tongue on the offhand. Apparently that's the way Blizzard wants us to be, with no fooling around, no tomfoolery about that. Now let's go ahead and go back to the changes. That's just one I wanted to lead with to say, I'm sorry if that kind of bothered you or rubbed you the wrong way about my raid testing. What we're going to be doing in the next raid testing is we're going to be testing with the normal Windfury Flame Tongue setup for Enhance. We're going to be trying different, multiple builds. We're also going to be trying Elemental Shaman in that raid testing. I won't be doing Resto in that raid testing, but I think there's enough out there about Resto so far, even though there have been some adjustments which we're going to get into. Now let's go back to the changes and how they affect Elemental, Enhance, and Resto. There are a bunch of changes having to do with shifting around different abilities to different levels. I don't really particularly care. It's not that big of a deal, so we're just going to move on. Those are the only things for Elemental, though, from a PvP talent standpoint, which is very disappointing to me. I thought that we were going to start to see some tuning of PvP talents, and I really hope, and I said it in my discussion with Smexin, that link's down below too, that it would be a tragedy if they did not modify the PvP talents. I do think the following: they could change the PvP talents or adjust them or tune them or add new ones or remove unused ones before the PvP season starts, and that will be in Shadowlands. Not before Shadowlands, not on launch of Shadowlands, but before the first season begins. If you remember in BFA Season 1 was kind of a craziness. There were things that were way overpowered, way underpowered, crazy stuff left and right, like Earthen Totem was nuts, Boomkins were crazy for a while, Ellie was crazy for a while. Certain things were just off the chain, and people were getting huge rating just suddenly because of it. Now that could likely happen here as the tuning gets pulled into effect. That could happen. There's so many different systems going on in Shadowlands. I definitely see that as being a risk. But anyway, that's where I see the PvP talents overall. Again, even for Enhanced, there's no PvP talent changes other than aligning them to certain levels. Now, the next one is Pyroclastic Shock. This is a new conduit. It's a potency conduit, which means it's one of the more aggressive ones. Earthshock has a 15 chance to extend the duration of your flame shock on the enemy by 4 seconds. Now, kind of interesting, but if you think about this from my perspective, I don't have any of the sims. The Earthshrine guys are going to have to go do that and tell us statistically which one's best. But to me, this one is not very exciting, and it doesn't change my gameplay that much, and it's only going to save me about a global. It's only going to save me that refreshing of the flame shock. If you read this, it says to extend the duration of your flame shock on the enemy. I think, and I haven't tested this yet, but I think that means just the target that you're earth shocking, it will extend the flame shock. It would be different if it extended all of your flame shocks, allowing you to spread flame shock to more targets. I think that would be a cool thing. But for this, if it's just the main target, this doesn't really excite me. And there are many other ones I would prefer to go. If I go ahead and look in the tree, they now have these markings next to them. I would rather go in PvP, make my fire elemental last longer. Fire Ellie is a huge cooldown. I would rather have lightning bolt have a chance to gain me double Maelstrom, because that's going to get me more Earth Shocks for more big dam, or potentially to proc a legendary. That's a big deal. Now, this one is the one we just talked about, so I'll skip that. And then this one, casting Earthquake, has a 15% chance to cast a Chain Lightning at a random enemy in that Earthquake. That's another Maelstrom back mechanism, particularly in PvE, that I think is good. So this one I don't think is going to see too much action unless you're talking single target only, but even then I think it's a stretch to think that you're not going to go Call of Flame, you're not going to go High Voltage, and you're not going to likely go, and I think that many people will go, the Potency Conduit, which is for your Covenant. Every Covenant has one. This one is, for Venthyr. The critical strike chance of Chain Harvest is increased by 10%. All these, again, will scale up as you rank up those conduits. But for me, these are the ones that I would absolutely go. I don't think I'm going to use that one very much. Now let's go ahead and keep moving. The other thing that I'm going to talk about for Elemental, I'm going to zip down here, ignore everything you're seeing. One big thing that is actually very sad from a PvP side, and maybe even PvE, is this Earth and Sky. This Conduit, which was in the game when Ellie was using Fulmination, Earthshock and Elemental Blast damage are increased by 7% per stack of Fulmination they discharge. Fulmination was a mechanic that was brought in early on in Shadowlands beta. It was purged from the game. I thought they were going to adjust this because what this was going to do was it was going to make your Earthshocks or your Elemental Blasts do huge damage, and everyone was excited. Everyone I talked to in PvP land was excited. You could line up big damage. It's similar to how Lava Shocked worked in BFA. Letting those Flame Shocks stack up that increased damage, you could then drop that damage like it's hot on your enemy and get huge damage. That's an exciting part of playing an Elemental Shaman. It does seem they want our damage to be in more of the casted abilities like Lava Burst and some other things, but this makes me sad because now with this being out of the game, we don't have a potential for a big pop in Earthshock. And they're kind of, last nail in the coffin on that being a potential option for PvP. And even PvE, this would be pretty useful. But with no Fulmination and it being Maelstrom again, it doesn't really make sense. So now let's go ahead and go back up to the rest of the changes. I just wanted to point that out. Next up, Enhance. Enhance didn't get touched, only the PvP talents got adjusted. Now Resto. Resto did get a lot of changes to how their heals are balanced. Healing Wave got a spell power scaling reduction of about 30% less spell power scaling. Was about 230, now it's at 330, and now it's at 300. Okay, so it's going to heal for less. Riptide got a huge buff. Now it went from 97% spell power scaling to 170%. Now what does this mean? It means we're going to heal for a bunch more. I would look at it like that and not try to understand the formulas too much. If you want to do that, I would ask the Earth Shrine people. They explained it to me. I'm not going to try to regurgitate that information. I'd prefer you go to the source and get that, yourself and learn. Now, another thing to note is this is the initial heal of Riptide. The heal over time did not get scaled up, so that's still going to do the same amount of healing. Along with this, Torrent was nerfed by 10%, going from increasing the initial heal of your Riptide by 30% to 20%. This seems like it would be very good, as this is a buff to Riptide. Riptide being able to be spread on all your targets or being able to use on cooldown. You might think right away, well, hey, Necrolord, that's great. That's great news for Necrolord. Necrolord, when you use Primal Wave on someone, that's going to apply that Riptide. That's great. Yeah, well, we'll get to that. Now next, let's go ahead. There were some PvP talents that were changed. Again, with the item level, the level you get them, we're going to ignore that. The other change that happened across all shamans, now it mainly impacts Resto Shamans, is that Chain Heal got a nerf of about 20% or 30% spell power scaling. Unfortunate. So what did they nerf? They nerfed Chain Heal, they nerfed Healing Wave, but they buffed Riptide. Okay. So the next part is the Covenant abilities, and this is where the rubber hits the road with this build, mainly because all of them were nerfed. They were all nerfed, except for one part of Chain Harvest, which was buff. We'll get to that. Now, Fate Transfusion, this was changed recently, but this was nerfed. It was 140% spell power scaling, and now they've reduced it. This was recently buffed, if you remember, kind of. Now, it now does max damage of all the damage it could do onto one target, and then as you get more targets up to 4, it will split that damage. Now, they did nerf this, and I kind of understand why. We were one-shotting people as a Resto Shaman by channeling this on someone. So definitely that is not great for the game if that's the way that it works. It is nice to think that you could get a lot of single target damage out there, but you can also do things like scale this with the Elemental Equilibrium Legendary. You can also scale it potentially with Earthen Spike from Enhance. So there's a lot of things you can still mess around here, but in general, they did nerf the overall spell power scaling by about 50%. So going from 140% to 94%. Now that's, it is what it is. We're gonna have to test to see how it feels. It wasn't a total gutting, but that one hurts quite a bit. The biggest nerf though was to Primordial Wave, where if you had 5 targets that had Riptide on them, and then you cast Primordial Wave, that if you then use a Healing Wave, which would heal for full amount, all those targets with healing on them with Riptide would then get a 60% effective healing wave applied to them, which is actually kind of sad because at 100% it was definitely very, very good, specifically for raids or Mythic Plus. 60% is kind of a not sure how this is going to feel. We're going to have to test it out, but that is quite a nerf. Now again, Lava Burst was equally adjusted, and it's now when you Flame Shock 3 targets and then you cast a Lava Burst, or you use Primordial Wave and then you cast a Lava Burst, it would then repeat that Lava Burst across those 3 targets with Flame Shock. This is now not 100% damage Lava Burst, it's now an 80% normal damage Lava Burst, which is very important to call out. Now the enhanced version, there looks to be a tooltip issue where it says Lightning Bolt affecting targets with Riptide, but really it should be Lightning Bolts affecting targets with Flame Shock. This is doing 100% of the damage, but still this is a very clunky feeling thing, and I personally I haven't really figured out a way to make it feel good, but it's just something you should know is that this all was pretty much tweaked a lot. Now to the money one. This is the one where you saw Enhanced Shamans one-shotting, LA Shamans one-shotting. So of course, adjustment inbound. We knew that. I'm totally okay with it. I don't want my class to be just revolving around an ability that does 40% of my damage. That means if that ability is adjusted, my entire class viability is gone. And it does not feel satisfying when you're pressing 400 buttons like a shaman might, and you're not it's not doing any damage. The only thing that's doing damage is that instant cast Chain Harvest, for example. So what they did is they took the scaling from 414 down to 310. Now you might remember they recently buffed this. Well, now they're nerfing it. Now it's about 310 spell power scaling, while they've now buffed the healing scaling. The healing scaling is now going from 255% of spell power to 315, very close to the 310 of the damage, which is interesting. And you might start to think about this and comparing Chain Harvest for a Resto Shaman to a Primordial Wave. Because if you think about it, if you have 5 targets, that's optimal for, if you have 1 enemy target, you have 5 friendly targets, you have 5 people in a party. If you cast Chain Harvest on that 1 target, you will actually heal all 5 of your teammates. And if you look at the tooltip here, it says it will heal them for 4.5k each. Great. That's 1 global heals 5 people 4.5k each. That is a buff from where it used to be, which was about less than 3k. Now Primordial Wave, if you were to get the Primordial Wave off and then you cast that healing wave, all 5 of those targets with Riptide on them, which required a lot of setup, are going to only be healed for 60% of that healing wave, which is only 60% of 4.5, which is like 2.7. So now you're actually getting less out. Now, of course, you're probably going to have Riptide out there anyway, and the proc of Riptide itself is very valuable, but I think it makes Chain Harvest a much more competitive option for the Resto Shamans out there. It also does decent damage, which is preferred in Mythic Pluses to help kill shit. Now, the only thing I will say is Primordial Wave is on a 45-second cooldown compared to the 1.5 second from Chain Harvest, 1.5 minute cooldown from Chain Harvest, but even then, it's going to be a little bit of a push and pull on that. So let me know what you think, which one is going to be better for our shamans out there. I know a lot of our shamans have been asking for more focus on them. Let us know. Comment below. I know the enhanced shamans can be a little rowdy, but throw your thoughts in there. I do think that how this is going to work for Ellie is it hits for about 4.55k, down from about 6.5 or plus, right? Which is okay. That's still a hard hitting ability, and it's still going to hit 5 targets at once. Now, for enhance, I've heard that it's still critting for a ridiculous amount of damage. I don't know if this is because of Sky Fury or what, but I still heard it like one-shot someone with a 20k hit. I don't know how that's happening. I haven't quite tested that level yet out, but we will be testing that on stream, so definitely come by every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/TiqqleThis. Love you. And so that's what I wanted to point out there. Now, Fey Transfusion again, yada yada. But now the one thing I actually think is sad, and I originally was pulling for Vesper Totem, but it did get another nerf, which I don't actually understand. It is actually, in PvE, it is nice to use, but it's not the easiest thing to manage. Positioning, replacing it, only using damage when it's down, or only using damage when it's around mobs and stuff like that. They actually took the spell power scaling from 80% to 60%, 64%. Why do you think they did this? I don't know why they did it. I would love to hear your thoughts, but I'm actually feeling a little bit bad for the Vesper Totem at this point. So with that being said, those are the changes for Enhance, Ele, Resto. You can still echo a Chain Harvest. It still scales off Maelstrom weapon stacks. You can't use that double Windfury. I know. But I still am in the kind of the lane that Venthyr still feels, or I think that Venthyr is still going to be the one that's going to be cross-spec, cross-content viability for being PvP, PvE for all 3 specs. I still think that way, mainly because Enhance is going to have a tough time being a Necrolord. In my opinion, it's just going to be real rough because it's just like, why would they make it so it repeats lightning bolts? Why wouldn't they make it so it repeats storm strikes? But with that being said, guys, I wanted to just spend a hot minute to go over the changes. This is overall, I know a lot of people have been not happy. They're saying that this is an overall nerf. I will say this, the changes to Chain Harvest, we knew those were going to come. The ones to Primordial Wave were a bit of a surprise, but they kind of set it up when they set this scaling to be 100%. Now, Fey Transfusion, we kind of knew it was a meme. The question will be, how much damage does it do now? Is it still a good single target option? And that's something we'll have to figure out through testing. So with that being said, everybody, I want to thank you so much. We're going to have more videos out, more Shadowlands stuff, and I know 75% of you haven't subbed yet. So hit that sub button, hit that like button. If you like this content, I'll keep it coming. Let me know what else you want to see. We'll do more raid testing when that happens. We'll be doing streams every day. I want to thank you all for the support. We are doing some giveaways of these stickers. These are holographic PP brains from being a sub in the chat. We're doing them for free. I'm giving them out to the chat every night on stream until they're gone. I only have 20 of them. So we'll see you on stream to get those stickers or whenever. And thank you so much again. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.